Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, March 3rd, 2016. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. As always, joined on Thursday by Bringer of Wisdom, Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong, was working on a scoop you'll see later on the network later today. That's why we're a little bit late today, Steve. Never a dull moment for a guy like yourself.
Good morning, Dan. Yeah, this morning was a fun morning, but I'm excited to talk about the Buckeyes right now, who have had a fun week as well as they landed one of their top targets.
No question. Obviously, the man in the Midwest, this was your story. If you could give some detail on people, on Antjuan Simmons, athlete linebacker type from Ann Arbor Pioneer High School, which for those who don't know is literally within hailing distance of the University of Michigan. Can you kind of bring us up to speed on what you think of Simmons as a prospect, and then how big of a deal do you think it really is that Ohio State went in and got a guy from Ann Arbor, and did Michigan really want him, et cetera?
Well, Antjuan Simmons is 6'1", 205-pound outside linebacker recruit for Ohio State. I went up and visited him in the I want to say the fall. Yeah, but definitely the fall. I went up there and visited him early in the fall, and I did not realize that I could see the big house from his high school. That's how close they are. They're neighbors. His high school is closer to Michigan's football stadium than a lot of schools on the Michigan campus, to get perspective of how close his high school was to Michigan. And but with that being said, Ohio State coveted Antjuan Simmons more than Michigan did, and that's one of the reasons why Antjuan Simmons is committed to Ohio State. I'm not saying, I don't know if he grew up a Michigan fan or not. If Michigan would have had him at the top of their board, I don't know if they would have gotten him. But Ohio State loves Antjuan Simmons. He was a top target for them. If you're a top target for the Buckeyes, that's obviously good enough for me because, you're obviously one of the best programs in the country, if not the best program in the country, right there with Alabama since Urban Meyer got there. And if you ask people around the Woody about Antjuan Simmons, I think they'll tell you he was the second best player in the state of Michigan in their mind, with Donovan Peoples-Jones, the five-star receiver, being number one. So Ohio State got one of their top targets in the Midwest, one of their top targets overall, in Antjuan Simmons. The timing of it was surprising. I thought Antjuan was going to take more visits, and I actually thought he was enjoying the recruiting process a bit, up to 40 offers, but Ohio State was the one he liked the most and the place he wanted to be. And from Coach Combs to Coach Fickle to Coach Meyer, he truly loved the coaching staff, and he can't wait to be a Buckeye. And there's no question in my mind he looks forward to taking it to Michigan, among others, on the next level.
Talk a little about his ranking. He's only got an 87-something in the 247 Sports rankings. You really normally wouldn't see Ohio State be this much into a guy with a ranking like that. Is this another case of where the Ohio State scouts or the Ohio State staff has a higher impression of him than the general public?
Well, he's got 40 offers. I think that the reason why he's got the high 3-star grade is because he doesn't have great size when you're talking the linebacker position, when you're projecting to the NFL. And I know that gets an eye roll from some of our listeners because they hate the fact that our rankings are based on the NFL. But I'm telling you guys, that's where we get judged the most, where these guys land in the NFL. It's the way it is. I certainly see your side of the story. We should be ranking them on college production. I get it, but that's not where our industry is judged, where it counts. And so Antjuan doesn't have NFL size, but what he does have is an incredible motor. And I'm telling you, there's not a player in the country that plays every snap with the same intensity like Antjuan Simmons. I should say there's no one that plays with more intensity on every snap. I think Isaiah Pryor is another guy that absolutely plays with the passion and a motor and intensity on every snap. Antjuan Simmons doesn't take a play off. And people say that, but he literally plays his ass off. And he plays both sides of the ball. He's a hustle guy. He works hard. He loves competing, and you watch game tape, he's flying around the entire game. And I think that those are the kind of guys, he's going to bring a juice to your program, and those are guys that Urban Meyer and company really like. He's a damn good football player. He doesn't have great size.
Yeah, I saw him in person on the field prior to the Michigan State game. Something we also want to mention about him. He has tremendous hair.
No question. He's got it growing out. He's got it flowing.
He's got, you'll recognize him. Kid and play are awesome. Think his hair is awesome. But definitely cool to pull a guy out of Ann Arbor, even if Michigan didn't want him as much as Ohio State did. My faith in Ohio State's ability to evaluate talent leads me to believe this is something that's going to be a stick in the eye for the go ahead.
No doubt. And I'm not saying Michigan didn't want him. I'm just saying he was coveted by Ohio State.
Sure.
And so he's a Buckeye, and he'll get a shot to play against Michigan 4 times.
Interesting that if you look at his crystal ball, there are 4 teams with a registered percentage, none of them Ohio State. So he's an interesting cat. I like guys who play kind of close to the vest and surprise you every now and then, especially when they pick the good guys. Speaking of someone who has picked the good guys and they ultimately go elsewhere, Shaun Wade, the Florida corner who's committed to Ohio State. You and I have discussed this ad nauseum, and it's been discussed here on the BM5 even recently, but I wanted you to touch on it. When I see a commitment from a Florida player to Ohio State that early, to me it's kind of just like, I don't know if there's a level below commitment. It's kind of like a really nice handshake or a nice hug. It doesn't really mean much. And now we're starting to hear about Shaun Wade possibly having eyes for other schools, those in Florida. Your general impression of Wade, where you think he'll end up, and am I off base on the Florida concept here?
Well, I don't know where it'll end up, but I think you're on track with just the far-away commitment, and that goes for everybody. Haskell Garrett's another young man, top 100 defensive tackle from Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman. He made what was a surprise commit to Ohio State, and then went and visited USC, and so if everyone, Jake Moretti commits to Ohio State out of Colorado, and we haven't heard a peep from him, you feel really good about that verbal, Shaun Wade and
Sure.
Haskell Garrett, I think Ohio State knew they were going to have to fight for them, but they're just such coveted players. You want their commitment, and you got it, and then you battle to keep it. Urban Meyer has certainly got a better track record than most of fending off big-time challengers from the local area for blue-chip recruits. So if I'm, I feel better about Ohio State keeping guys like this in the fold than I do other high-profile programs, but they'll have to battle, and they know it, and it just is what it is.
Wade, as a prospect, very, very highly rated. Yeah.
He's elite inside the Woody.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Speaking of elite prospects, this has been arguably the most common storyline of the last month or so, and we haven't discussed it here. Michigan is at the home of many elite prospects, including some future Buckeyes. IMG Academy doing what they do down there. Your feelings on the whole Michigan practicing at IMG, much ado about nothing, great recruiting tool, way to keep yourself in the headlines. Your thoughts?
Well, I do think that there's a recruiting element to it that's pretty cool for Michigan. I mean, they're going to get a chance to have an open practice at IMG on Friday, and the whole IMG football team's going to get to attend, and they'll get to watch a Michigan practice. Now, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge deal. I don't think a kid's going to commit to Michigan because they got to watch the practice, but it is an element. You invite kids to your campus all the time to watch you practice to get a feel for how you do things. Michigan's bringing that to IMG, and so that's certainly no one else is able to do that in this cycle. So, I mean, to say an edge is overblown, but it's, I believe recruiting's a game of inches, and there's an inch. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
So yeah, it's good for Michigan to do that. Now, they paid money to go down there and do it. So was the investment, is the bang worth the buck? I don't know. But, if you're not ever having to think about money, then sure, do it. I'm all for it. I think that it's certainly beneficial for Michigan to bring their culture down to IMG for the IMG kids to see it. Now, they're not allowed to have personal contact with these kids while they're down there. Now, they can still, have phone calls and Twitter messages with them just like they weren't there, in the evenings and stuff. But Jim Harbaugh can't talk in person to Josh Kando down there. That would be against the rules. But Josh Kando gets to watch a Michigan practice. Jordan Anthony gets to watch Michigan practice. Cesar Ruiz, Robert Hainsey, they'll get to keep an eye on the offensive linemen and see how Tim Drevno, Michigan's offensive line coach, works. So I do think there's that's a good thing for Michigan, but, I'm not going to blow it out of proportion and say Michigan's going to land 5 kids because they practiced at IMG. Michigan's going to land kids from IMG because those kids like Michigan, whether Michigan came down there or not. Now, it certainly shows those kids, hey, you're important to us. We're bringing our spring practice down there basically for you. Yeah, I think that means something too, and so it can't hurt Michigan, long story short, to practice at IMG from a recruiting standpoint, but not the end-all, be-all. And Ohio State and other programs are going to land elite players from that school as well, and they didn't practice at IMG.
Michigan will continue to play catch-up and do what they need to do that. Buckeyes will continue to lead the way. Steve, we appreciate it. We'll have Steve back next Thursday. Keep it locked in, Bucknutters.
Thanks, guys. See you.